Nah, dude, you're a space marine. You shall know no fear. Okay. Don't do that. Don't do that. Why would you do that? Oh no, the fight's out. That's right. That's right. I want my chat. My chat box is stupid, and I don't appreciate that. Yeah, right. That's fine. It can go over here for now. There we go. Oh my gosh, what is happening? We're live, by the way. I'm over here talking like an idiot, and we're 100% live. Hey everybody, you know me, your friendly neighborhood idiot. We are live. Let me grab my Twitch chat monitor here. Use the stream monitor to monitor chat. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, bro. That is 100% what I'm trying to do. Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm the worst. Uh, Literally the worst. I just want my. There we go. My channel. All right, there we go. We're getting there. I'm so used to just doing everything by myself. All right. All right. Let's see. Can we fix this? No. All right, there we go. Nope, it's just the way it's gonna be. It's just jank and broken. So if you're on YouTube chat, I apologize. OBS is not letting me see my YouTube chat right now. It's just like, hey, bro, don't even care. Yeah, Bailey, we can't hear you, you silly goose. I relayed it cash money. God, words are tough too, by the way. Uh, So yeah, I'm terrible. We get to iron things out on the fly as we go. You're welcome for that. Hey. All right. And while you fix your mic, let me pull this up. Oh, maybe. Oh, you know what? Let me add my desktop audio. Maybe that's what's going on, is I need to unmute desktop. Yep. So it's actually me. So once again, what I tell you, it's me. It's always me. All right, desktop audio, unmute it. All right, Bailey, say something. Tyler, let me know if you can hear him.
I'm
Hey,
here and I'm
Samo,
talking.
what's up? All right. Yeah, we hear you. So yeah, it was 100% me. Imagine not being a dumbass, right? All right. God, I'm gonna be like talking like an old person here, right? But how do I screen share on
It's about
Google?
right. Well, it's this big button that's got an arrow pointing up that says present now.
Oh, that makes sense. Your entire screen. Yeah, we could probably do
That is a bad idea. Do
window.
not do
I
that.
don't
That
have
is a
anything up
terrible
that
idea.
I'm worried about.
No, but what you're going to do is you're going to go into an infinite loop because if you're looking at the
Yeah.
stream and
Well,
you're,
I've got two monitors, so I don't know if I get to pick which one I share.
it's good. That's a good
Let's
question.
find out. I do. Hell yeah. So now, whoop-pow, we are maybe presenting my screen. Let's find out. It's we're doing it. We're doing it. All right, cool. So, for everybody that doesn't know, I'm Chris with Phoenix Gaming. With us today is Bailey with Danklist. He's also a member of the Phoenix Gaming 40k team. He's our resident Dark Angels player and expert, and you know, lover of all things Imperium.
That's not necessarily true.
It's definitely true. Hey,
I
Tyler,
don't like Gilliman.
shut up. Bad idea. No, Sam, I promise I don't have anything incriminating. Yeah, I got I got it. I love them. Mortal wounds are my favorite. It's my favorite mechanic in the whole game. Absolutely. So Bailey, you had a couple things you want to talk about with regard to this Marine release. So where did you want to start off with, buddy?
Oh, so I just the idea that we kind of talked about in the pregame was the idea of looking at Space Marines in general. Because I know Chris, I don't think you've done of any sort of generalized index Space Marines talk. I know you did Chaos this morning. I watched a little bit of it. I know you're getting ready to do Drukari and Sisters and all that when that comes out.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I just, since we were going to talk specifically about Dark Angels, since Dark Angels sort of fall under the Space Marine banner, I wanted to kind of look at Space Marines at an overview, at like the, the 3-foot view as opposed to the Golden Demon view, and then move from that to Dark Angels, and from Dark Angels overview to the little bit of the Golden Demon view, maybe the tabletop standard view.
Right, right.
And anyone that took Rhetoric 101, you know what I just did there. And looking at who's in the chat, I know at least one person in there that knows what I'm talking about. So Wabash always fights, for those
Oh
of you
my
that
gosh,
are out there.
Wabash, Jesus, here it is.
Yep.
I can't go 2 minutes.
And it's in the chat. Let's go. So
Is that like
looking at
is
Space
that
Marines
like the Cardi
overall,
B song? WAF?
man, maybe. So looking at the Space Marines and over at a big view, so like right, this dropped yesterday. I've had
God
to work. I
damn.
have a day job,
Dude, you just got
so
roasted.
and the I haven't had a lot of time to look through it. There's like almost 200 pages of the Space Marines only rules, and then Dark Angels adds another 40. So that's 200 pages of content that have come out in the last couple of days, and I haven't been able to like sleuth through all of it completely. So in sort of I'm looking at this and sort of in between things that I'm doing, this is what I've noticed, and that is that Space Marines, one of their biggest things is that their synergy is they're synergized around objectives, either their units standing near objectives or the things they're shooting at being near objectives. So
Right.
there's
Whether they are or the target is, it's
right.
playing the objective, right?
Now see, this is where I don't have the specifics in my head, but I know that there is some unit or a stratagem, something exists that if something is shooting at something near an objective, they get a bonus. And I don't think it's a stratagem. I think there's like a specific unit that
There's
got this ability.
probably more than one. Um,
Right.
while we're talking about Space Marines in general, right? Before we
Right.
dig too deep into your 3-foot view, was there any stratagems you thought that really stuck out in your head, or was there any kind of any units that really stuck out to you where you were just like, well, this is going to be an auto include for most Space Marine Space. God, I'm dying here, dude. Most Space Marine armies.
So for me, I think the big thing, and this was like sort of my second bullet point on the big view, was the
Shut up,
that
Tyler.
some of the best Space Marine weapons. I think one of the best weapons you're going to get out of the Space Marine book is the Chain Fist,
Yeah.
because when you look at the army as a whole, they have a lot of synergy. They have the Oath of the Moment army rule, which we'll get into in a second when we talk about the Dark Angels versus Space Marines mechanic a little bit, or dynamic a little bit. But if you're just looking at, I went through this and I didn't look at any of the special rules the first time going through, and I just looked at straight stat lines. And when you look at straight stat lines, no buffs, no hero buffs, no spells, nothing, the Chain Fist is probably going to be the most reliable, just rolling dice, no rerolls, no nothing, weapon that Space Marines have for killing things that are vehicles. Because one of the things I did is I went and looked at a lot of the tanks when I first got the rules, and I noticed that very few of the Space Marine unit vehicles had weapons that were strong enough to wound their own chassis, like in a mirror match,
Right.
on a 4-up or better. And this is important because so many people who play 40k play Space Marines. So if you're playing another Space Marine player and you can't wound their tank on a 4-up or better with your tank, I feel like you're going to have issues, or people are going to be kind of like, wait, what's going on here? Especially if that other tank does have a way to do it. All right, you'll get some feel bads. So I'm flipping through the book or through the packet, and the only thing I can really see that jumps out to me is a Chain Fist, where it's anti-vehicle 3-up.
Yeah,
Now,
no,
this
and
doesn't help
they're
going
what,
into
strength 8, neg
monsters,
2, 2
but that's
damage, right?
yeah. But having the vehicle 3-up gives you a chance to interact with knights, gives you a chance to interact with Baneblade chassis, the Land Raider size chassis. So some of those things that were traditionally in that T8 or higher bracket in 9th edition, all those things got higher toughness now. And the one way to kind of mitigate how high that toughness is to take a Chain Fist. But where you are going to struggle is if you run into monsters,
Well,
because
and
the Chain Fist
go ahead.
doesn't have any special rules for fighting monsters.
Well, let's take a look at one of those chassis right now while you're talking about it, right? This is just a regular dreadnought, the little
Right.
doofy box knots, right? Good. I'm glad you always feel bad, Tyler. That's the way you should feel. Uh, Obviously, they went from T7 to T9, which is a pretty big bump when you consider that Meltas seem to have generally stayed at strength 8. I haven't looked at all of them, but like even the multi-melta here is strength 9, so that just means you're wounding it on 4s. And
Right.
T9 seems to be the low end of the vehicle toughness spectrum. Rhinos that were T7, dreadnoughts that were T7 went to T9. I don't know where the speeders landed. I haven't looked at those yet. I assume 7 or 8 is where they kind of ended up. Have you
I'll go
looked at them
take a
yet?
look. I looked at them, and like the big thing I saw in them in general was that they all have abilities that if they shoot something, then they grant a bonus to everything else in the army for attacking whatever it is they shot at. And it depends on the target. So like a hail strike, if a unit, if it shoots at something, then when something else targets that unit, you get to improve the AP by 1.
T9
And then
on that one, by
and
the
then
way.
a thunder strike, if they shoot at something, then the next thing that shoots at them gets to add 1 to the wound roll with a ranged attack.
Oh, okay. So yeah, here's the hail strike. We've got if it hits with 1 or more attacks, then whenever another Adeptus Astartes unit makes a ranged attack, improve the AP characteristic of that attack by 1. So,
Yep. And you can't stack it, but that's still helpful.
and then the Thunder Strike, you said select 1 monster or vehicle, add 1 to the wound roll. So and I
Right,
think
had to
so.
be a
I think
monster vehicle.
competitively, anything that has this type of interaction, this Thunder Strike, is going to be important for Marine players. Because, like you said, there's not a lot of tools in that toolbox for the T10s, T11s that we're seeing.
Right,
So like a great unclean one, I think, is T11 or 12. And because they're not vehicles, they're monsters, you're gonna struggle into those if all you have is anti-vehicle. Like some Nurgle Demons list could be pretty gross because I haven't
right,
seen a ton of anti-monster yet. There is some, but I haven't seen a lot.
right. So I had that. Let's see here. Oh, then basically that covered my last point that I had sort of for Dark Angel or for Space Marines in general. The land speeders, the anti-vehicle weapons, probably the best one being the Chain Fist, which means you, even though this is supposed to be, people have taught this being a shooting edition. I look at this and go, we're still going to go punch stuff,
Yes.
and then you want to be on your objectives, near your objectives. So, looking at that objective marker synergy, Dark Angels are going to take it to a whole new level when you look at their detachment rule. So if you run Dark Angels, basically you have to run a Unforgiven Task Force. It's a detachment. So because you're Adeptus Astartes, you still get Oath of the Moment,
Right.
but instead of taking so if you open up the index, right, Space Marine index, the first thing you see is Army Rule, Oath of Moment, and then right below that on the next page is Gladius Task Force Detachment Rules. So you get Oath of the Moment, but what you're giving up is everything that's in that Gladius Task Force. So instead of having that, Dark Angels players get Grim Resolve. And what that says is that instead of basically having combat doctrine, so you give up all of the, once per game, you can have advance and shoot, advance and fall back, or fall back, shoot and charge, and advance and charge. You can give all that up to get this, which is while you are an Adeptus Astartes unit in your army is battle shocked, change the objective control characteristic of models in that unit to 1 instead of 0.
That's good though.
which
With as
which
much
is a
battle
pretty
shock
big
stuff,
deal.
right? I was gonna say is with as much as we've seen, even just from faction focuses, not even digging through indexes, but the faction focuses, there was a lot of this unit takes a battle shock, that unit takes a battle shock.
Yep.
So knowing that you'll never get your OC just completely shut off from battle shock tests will make them a little bit stronger into those types of armies. Because I think, what is it? The Screamer Killer has something that forces battle shock. Chaos Knights will force a lot of battle shocks.
Well,
Yeah.
and even Space Marine players can do it because Assault Terminators, when they charge into something, they can force it to take a battle
And
shock
I think
test.
the Infernus dudes, right? The new
Yeah,
Flamer
if it's an
guys force
infantry
them.
model, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, real quick, before we jump into the next thing, there was something I had already found it, I think. So assault intercessors have shock assault. Each time this model in this unit targets an enemy with a melee attack, reroll a wound roll of 1. If that unit is within range of an objective marker, you reroll the wound roll
Yeah.
completely. So again, like just to kind of reiterate that point you said, is there's a lot of objective marker interactions, and there's a lot of incentive to play infantry, I've noticed, even if you don't want to. You know,
Right.
so some of the intercessors I saw had sticky objectives. The assault intercessors can reroll wounds, and having played a couple games of 10th, like they were very small games, but having been able to play them, melee is weird, right?
Okay.
And we'll get into that a little deeper towards the end of this because there's some interactions I want to talk to you about. But melee is pretty weird because it's not necessarily less killy, right? I had a unit of berserkers hit a unit of 10 boys and pretty much killed all 10 of my boys, and I wasn't surprised by it at all. And then really, like, when my boys fought, I still killed 3 to 4 berserkers on the counter swing, and it was only 10 boys into 5 berserkers. So it's weird because we're still pretty killy. The difference
Right.
is there's a bit more interaction. And so like with the AP reductions, my orc boys are rolling saves against things that I just wouldn't be able to before. So
All right. And then another example is looking at the Primaris Ancient with Unbreakable Duty. If he's within range of an objective marker within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield, then he has a 4-up Feel No Pain bubble around him.
is that
So again,
this
another
handsome boy
interaction
right
in the
here?
book. So, and then I guess the other thing too, you were just saying with the interaction, one of the things you also see in a lot of Space Marine things, I think some of the dreadnoughts
Death
in
guards. You're
Blood
good. I'm just
Angels
checking chat. Death guards forcing a lot of battle
and
shock. Nice.
I know that in Dark Angels, there's the Land Speeder Vengeance does this, but there's several things in the Space Marine Codex where ATVs do it and attack bikes do it as well. Where if you attack one of their the unit they're attached to or near them, they will actually shoot back at the thing that attacked the squad. There's several things across Space Marines in general, and across different specific factions of them or chapters where if you attack something and this thing is standing near the thing that got attacked or is attached to the thing that attacked, it will attack back.
Oh, cool.
Uh, so that is also a thing that Space Marines do as sort of a general, like across the board
Tyler,
sort of thing.
shut up.
Yeah, no, I just saw it too.
Tyler, I want you to drop me an Oprah gif in the chat, buddy. Give me that a battle shock for you with Oprah, please.
Yeah. So that's sort of the Dark Angel. So that's more Space Marine Dark Angels bit. If you're a long time Dark Angels player, like I know some of you in the chat are, one of the things you're going to notice is there's no Weapons of the Dark Age anymore.
Good.
That is gone. And that's where, like, if you looked at the detachment abilities, right, Dark Angels players don't have the ability to fight on death. That is a Gladius Task Force only bit.
Nice. Oh god. My computer's like, you've got so much going on, homie.
Yeah,
Let me
exactly.
I want to see. So and again, I haven't gotten to really
Actually, I
dig
guess
into
that's not
Marines.
true. They have this Grim Retribution stratagem where it's worded differently than only in Death Does Duty End, but it says that if one of your units loses one or more models as a result of an attack, you can shoot as if it's your shooting phase, but you must attack the unit that attacked you, and you can only do this if the target is an eligible enemy and is an eligible target. So it's not quite like his Death Does Duty End, but it's similar Uh, but the stratagems, the Dark Angel stratagems, I
For
think are
sure,
pretty
Sam.
cool,
For
where you
sure.
can give yourself lethal hits. And then here's the thing again: if you are battle shocked, you actually get a critical hit on a 5-up instead of a 6-up with the Unforgiven Fury ability or stratagem. And this is a thing throughout Dark Angels. If you are battle shocked, things just get magically better. And it's even more apparent in the enhancements, where if you go and get, like, if everyone remembers Pendant of Remembrance for Deathwing
Watch your mouth.
Ancients in the last edition, where it gave you -1 damage. Well, now it gives you a 6-up Feel No Pain, but if you're battle shocked,
It's a
it gives you a
4-up.
4-up Feel No Pain.
That's
If
bonkers.
you have the Heavenfall Blade, you get +1 attack, +1 strength, +1 damage on your melee weapons. Unless you're battle shocked, then you double it and you go to 2 attacks, 2 strength, 2 damage. Stubborn Tenacity, you get to add 1 to your hit roll if you're below starting strength. If you are battle shocked, you get to add +1 to your wound roll as well. And this bonus isn't just for the character, it's for the whole squad. So you could put this character in a squad,
Oh, for
let like
stubborn
one
tenacity?
model,
Yeah.
yeah, let one model get killed, and all of a sudden the whole squad has +1 to hit,
Yep.
and then you get battle shock. Now they all have +1 to wound,
And
and it's not just
go ahead.
against it's not just melee; it's everything. So now you have this super squad running around doing craziness.
Real quick, if you're on YouTube, I apologize. My YouTube chat monitor is down, so if you're chatting and I'm not responding, it's not that I don't like you guys. It's that OBS decided I wasn't good enough today. And on that comment though that you said, that's another thing to keep in mind is when you have a hero or a character or a leader, whatever word you want to use for it, when they're attached to a unit, for all rules purposes, they are just one unit except for rules that trigger from unit destruction. So, like
Right,
Bailey was saying, this thing gives the whole unit +1 to the hit roll and +1 to the wound roll as long as the triggers are met. And because they count as one unit for all rules purposes, it's whatever unit you've attached that guy to. So just to let everybody know, if you haven't seen that interaction yet, that's why and how it works. Is once they're in the squad, it's just one big unit, and that also affects your starting strength. So
right. So that was a big key piece there. Uh, Dark Shroud, instead of just giving us -1 to hit, it gives you cover as well now within 6 inches of it.
is
The
that a strat?
flying land speeder with the icon. And then when we were talking about the chain fist before with Terminators, what I like about Black Knights, Ravenwing Black Knights, is that not only do they have +4 auto wound or wound vehicles when they charge, but they also have anti-monster 4-up. So the Ravenwing Knights, which were very powerful going into, in the last edition, have maintained some of that power going into this edition. And which is very important and interesting, considering that, having looked at some of the other specific chapters, like if you go look at Space Wolves right now, they took all of the normal Thunderhammers out of Wolfen. Like, Wolfen don't have normal Thunderhammers anymore. You go look at Vanguard Vets, which were everywhere with sort of regular Codex Space Marines. All right, gone are the Thunderhammers, gone are the Lightning Claws. They just have heirloom weapons now. Doesn't matter what they're armed with, it counts as an heirloom weapon. They don't have specific war gear anymore. So there definitely was a targeting of certain things that were over prevalent in the previous edition. And it's interesting that with the Ravenwing Black Knights, that they just got souped up even more. Now, they did take a hit on their weapon. They don't do 2 damage anymore with their Corvus hammers, but they gained all these abilities to interact with stuff bigger than them on the turn that they charge, which I don't think is too bad of a deal. And from what you've told me, Chris, with with the way heroic interventions work now, which is also crazy,
And
that
actually,
that,
so
that
this
would
is a
interact
good
with
segue
that.
because that was the one thing I wanted to talk to you about, and that's a good segue for it. Let me
Okay.
pull that sweet baby up. Let's close you out. Let's bring it. Will it show up on the screen? It might not. I don't know. No, it won't. So that's fine. Let's see if we can just boop, and then we'll just bam. Now it will. Look at that. I'm so clever. Heroic intervention. All right. So this strat is bonkers good. It is so much better than it was before as a not strat. You use it in your opponent's charge phase just after an enemy unit ends a charge move. And then one unit from your army that is within 6 inches of that enemy unit and would be able to declare a charge against that enemy unit can do it. So basically, you get to declare a charge on your enemy's unit. I'm into that sort of thing, Sam. But I know you were talking to Tyler. It's okay. So you can now declare a charge in your opponent's turn that targets only the enemy unit that finished the charge within 6, right? And you resolve
Right.
that charge as if it were your charge phase. And because you charge, you now gain the fight first.
No, you don't. It
Why?
says it at the bottom. You don't do
It
that.
doesn't?
It says restrictions. You can only select a vehicle unit, and if your army, if it's a walker, note that even if this charge is successful, your unit does not receive any charge bonus this turn. Reference page 29, which is what you're talking about.
You can only select the vehicle if it's walker. Even still, like getting that and just being able to like block off other people is super
Right.
good. It's one of those where I was able to use it and basically restrict where Matt could charge me.
Right.
And it's one of those where you really, and then especially if you've got enough CP to interrupt, if somebody sends more than one unit at you and you have multiple places where you can interrupt, you can really gum up whatever plan they had.
Right.
Just by
well, and the
having
thing
that.
to remember
Go ahead.
too is there's so many things in the Space Marine book or the index that allows you to do this for free. Basically, any unit that's got a champion of some kind or led by a champion, they can heroically intervene for free.
Do they still use the strat, or is it they just get to do it?
They use the stratagem for free.
Right,
and you
but
can
it's
do it even and if you have a champion, so like looking at the Primaris Company champion,
sure.
his honor or death rule, he can use the stratagem not only for free, but he can use it if it's already been used.
Yeah,
This
because I
turn.
think one of the captains has a similar ability, doesn't it? Where you
Yeah,
can.
a captain can use like a generic bare bones Space Marine captain. Yes, I'm going up. It's called Rights of War.
Yeah.
And once per battle round, one unit from your army with this ability can be targeted by a stratagem for 0 CP, even if another unit in your army is already. So you could technically use the stratagem for free twice.
Yes. If you have both of these units, and even if you don't, just knowing that you could do it twice is like crazy good. Because again, just because it's going to make people very cautious about how they charge, especially if you're not a melee centric army and you're just trying to charge to snatch objectives type of thing. Because you and I both know that the charge and the fight phase are more about movement and objective grabbing than they are about damage dealing. Like the damage dealing's kind of a bonus, but ultimately
Right.
the goal is to tag objectives, steal them from people. And if you're playing against somebody who's not got a lot of damage output in the fight phase, knowing that you could just have two units jump all over them, boom, 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 boom. How strong are Dark Angels? We're kind of in the middle of that talk. We're all over the place, Jimmy. You know how I am. But
right, we're kind of jumping back and forth between Dark Angels and Space Marines as it seems to fit us. Basically, is what's happening
yep.
because little parts of the conversation are triggering in one head and then triggering into the other head, and we're kind of bouncing back and forth. But we have sort of a general plan. We're in the what makes Dark Angels special phase, sort of in my head, and I'm trying to keep up with that. Like I said, I haven't read through so much of everything because they just like literally dropped 200 pages of rules on us, and we're still trying to figure it all out. But the big thing is that anything like with Dark Angels, right? You have Raven Wing command squads, you have Deathwing command squads. You can still take regular command squads, so you can put a lot of these units that have this free heroic intervention strat on the board. And they all come with apothecaries, so you can always bring one model back. and if they have an ancient in them, which means they get +1 to their objective control. So Dark Angels. So here's the thing, Chris. I needed that's been a big talk with Dark Angels players is if you get battle shocked,
Yeah.
right, and you're supposed to go to 0, does that ignore all modifiers? That's something I have not
Okay, so
found
because of the add
exactly.
1 to objective control
Right,
characteristics of its models.
right.
Oh boy. So
So would you go to 0, add 1 for being Grim Resolve Dark Angels, and then add a second one? Because if it just says the
let me
objective
pull up
control
Grim Resolve and see
characteristic of
how
all
it's.
of its models is 0. So the OC value of the model goes to 0. And then I would assume then that would mean that if you have modifiers like the way that this Ancient's ability is worded, actually, I guess it wouldn't because it says when this unit contains an Ancient, add 1 to its. That's something we're going to have to find out because if this says it's 0 and then I have something that adds 1.
So here's how I think it's intended to interact, and we will have just for everybody out there. There's intended to be a day one FAQ designer's commentary for things like
Yeah,
this, and for like the Chaos Knights and how their battle shocks that are out of sequence interact and stuff like that. So I was talking to Mike and Ryan about that. There is intended to be a day one FAQ commentary. Whether or not it's on
okay.
time is a different question. But here's how I think it's supposed to interact is when you're battle shocked, you're just 0, right? We're just resetting you to 0. Doesn't matter your modifiers. Kind of like how Overwatch works. It only hits on
Right.
sixes. You are now 0, and the only thing that can modify that is something that specifically says it
When
modifies it
battle
when
shocked.
battle shocked. And the reason I say that is again, if we look at Grim Resolve as our precedent, it specifically calls out when you're battle shocked. And then the other thing is that um, my ADD's kicking in, man. Give me a second. When you're battle shocked, right, it just resets it to 0. If they had intended for it to be like something that didn't just set it to 0, it would be like subtract 5 or subtract 10 so that you could eventually get those positive modifiers to get them to interact. And I think so that's
Right.
why I think the intent was like don't care about your modifiers, it's just 0 period end of discussion. And then
Right.
the only thing that interacts with it is what is supposed to interact with it.
No, I got you. Well, guess we'll find out. It'd be a sad day to lose the always OC2 Terminators and whatever else. I was really kind of looking forward to that. But the fact that you can have these squads and have all this put into one squad, I think is going to be a pretty big deal going forward. I know a lot of people are all about Inner Circle and how that changed at the end of the last edition. Inner Circle still exists, but Inner Circle only applies to Deathwing Knights now, and it's -1 damage on them, which a lot of people are losing their minds because there's also a stratagem that Dark Angels have in this formation where you can subtract damage from one damage from an attack called Unbreakable Lines, which used to mean that the stratagem used to do was that if you were in combat with something and you could turn off basically fighting in multiple ranks.
Right.
So basically, you can only be attacked by things that are in base-to-base contact with you. So if somebody loaded up a bunch of Tyranids or a bunch of Orc boys on your guys, you'd be like, yeah, only the front like 3 can fight me, and so I don't die, and then I just counter smack you to death. So there's been a lot of discussion. Probably also going to be that commentary of is damage being mitigated to 0? Can you mitigate damage to 0? Is it always a minimum of 1? Because there's a way here to make with Deathwing Knights a neg2 modifier to damage.
Well, and again, I think that's one of those where we go rules as written, rules as intended. And like I talked to some of the playtesters about it, and everybody's basically of the same opinion I am. And that's 4 events. We just minimum of 1 it as a tournament organizer, right?
Right.
And then once the designer's notes and commentary come out, there's a strong consensus that it gets fixed and or patched. Like It gets that
Right.
minimum of 1, and it'll probably be written as a core rule so that they don't have to change every single individual index. Because if we just make a core rule that says anytime damage is reduced, it can't be reduced below 1. Yep,
Right.
that's exactly what we're talking about, Jim. It's one of those where I think that's the route it's going to go. Is it's just going to get a core rule written so they don't have to adjust every single individual index. They can put it in the core rules in the FAQ and make it nice, make it neat, and they don't have to revamp every index, and it just saves them time. You know.
Right. Oh, excuse me.
The other option, and I don't think this is the case, is that for open play, it's just a jank busted rule, and then for match play, they're like, all right, we're going to minimum one it.
Well, and it also seems to me it also makes sense the fact there are so many rules where you can't modify things above or minus a plus or a minus one.
Right.
So why would you change that with damage? I know basically the only exception is armor penetration, where you can modify that by more than one. Like with negatives, you can only ever modify it plus one.
Right.
But you can't ever go. But you are allowed to go more negative. But that seems to be the only example of something you can do that.
So I haven't looked at these data sheets yet, so this is my first time seeing it.
Right.
So I'm just looking at this mace and the flail.
Yeah, the mace got changed. I guess the big change, I guess for Dark Angels overall, that if you haven't looked at it yet, Chris, is have you looked at the lion yet? I know it was in the faction focus, but I know you don't read anything about Dark
I
Angels.
don't read. No, I haven't. That's one I wanted to make sure we talked about. So we
All
could
right.
do it
Well,
now, or we can.
let's go to it. Let's go to it. That's the most important
It's
one.
not going to be the lion. Stupid.
So here he is. So we're looking at him. He's moving 8. He's got toughness 9.
Why?
Right.
Why is he?
Save 2 up.
All right, go ahead.
Wounds 4, leadership 5, OC 4. Yeah, I've got it pulled up on mine. I'm looking at it separate. He's got deep strike. He's got fight first, oath of the moment. All right, he's got his pistol, and it's depending on which profile you're using here. It's got 4, 2 attacks, ballistic skill 2. The bolter side is strength 4, neg 1, 2 neg 1 AP, 2 damage, and then you've got the strength 8, neg 3, 2 damage plasma side. And then he's got a sweep and a strike with his sword. The strike has lethal hits and 8 attacks, 2 up, strength 12, neg 3 or neg 4, 4 damage. So cut down on the attacks a little bit here, especially when you look at his sweep, which does have sustained hits 1, but it only has a base 16 attacks and web skill
Trash.
2, strength 6, neg 3, 2 damage. But that to me isn't even like the most important rule. And we're going to go look at the shield. We'll save the most important rules for the end, but we're going to look at the Emperor shield. Each time a attack targets this model, it's -1 to wound. Now, if you have listened to the Path to Redemption podcast that I'm on with my buddy Heath, that we do once a month, and I have the May episode ready to go. I'm just kind of waiting on Heath's final approval of my rough draft. We talk about the fact that when we were looking at we were talking about what the Lions rules were going to be. One of the things I mentioned is that he would have -1 to wound. And so even though it wasn't in 9th edition, it's here in 10th edition. And then he retained his ability to ping mortal wounds back at people after he makes a save roll of a 6.
Is that
He gets the
a melee attack, right? Yeah.
Yep. He has a -1. He has the lone operative ability if he's within 3 inches of one or more adeptus astartes infantry units. He has a 3-up invuln, which there aren't very many of those that I've seen in the game, but he has one. And now this is the part that's wild that all Space Marines have. Like Gilliman has this, and I think you're going to see this across a lot of the big dudes in every faction. And I think this is a really, really cool addition to 10th edition. Is in your command phase, you have multiple abilities that you can choose from that are active until your next command phase on big models like Johnson. All right, so the first
On a big
one,
Johnson.
actually, I'm not even going to do the first one because that's my favorite. I'm going to look at the other ones first. So he's got Martial Exemplar, which used to be a rule on champion units. It says that while you have friendly Adeptus Astartes unit within 6 inches of this model, each time it makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. So he just has a +1 to hit roll in melee bubble. Pretty sweet. There's no hiding from the Watcher's aura, which is based on his 10th edition or 9th edition rule. So if they're within 6 inches of him, have a 4-up, feel no pain against mortal wounds. Also pretty good. But here's the best one, I think. I think this is wild. All secrets revealed. Once per turn, when your opponent targets a unit from their army with a stratagem, but before that stratagem is resolved, if that unit is within 12 inches of this model, you gain a CP, and that enemy unit must take a battle shock test. If that test is failed, in addition to that unit being battle shocked, the stratagem's effects are not resolved. And that stratagem still counts as having been used this phase.
Yeah, that's super
So,
good.
so Dark Angels have a Agent of Vect / Plan Generations in the Making
True that, Sam.
ability coming off of your Primarch, which I think is pretty wild. And that's also something else that Dark Angels have a lot of. There's a lot of interesting and creative ways for them to get command points. Space Marines in general, like infiltrators, can get command points if they have a communication the relay on them and you use a stratagem on them. There's a way for you to recoup your command points off of them. And then in the special characters, I think the Interrogator Chaplain Asmodee, if he at the start of your fight phase, each enemy character within 6 inches of him must take a battle shock test, subtracting 1. In addition, if this or subtract 1 from the test if they do. In addition, each time this model destroys an enemy character and with a melee attack, you gain 1 CP. So he helps you gain CP. Azrael just gives you a CP every turn because he's the Grand Master at the start of your command phase. So if you really wanted to, I mean, you can only gain 1 CP outside the CP you're supposed to get at the start of each player turn. But there's multiple sources
Like
of
a lot of
places for Space
redundancy
Marine
so that you can
players.
keep having them.
Right. But some of them are fluffy in the sense that like your Interrogator Chaplain must go interrogate a dead enemy, a dying enemy for information for you to get a command point, which I think is pretty cool. And looking at the infiltrators where they have that communication device that allows them to recoup CP, it makes me wonder what's going to happen with Imperial Guard with all the Vox casters that they have. So I wouldn't be, and them also notoriously being known for having ways to recoup CP. If anyone remembers 8th edition's Loyal 32. If you know, you know.
There we go. I just wanted
But
to look
overall,
at the Infiltrator squad. Go ahead, man.
yeah, no worries. But overall, for me, with Dark Angels, that's sort of my overall impression is that they're going to be fighting on it. If you take the Dark Angels specific detachment, you're looking at playing the objective game. You're going to get your units on objectives. If they get battle shocked, you're not going to cry too much about it because your army actually gets better if it's battle shocked. And it's going to be kind of similar to what we saw going into end of ninth, before they really nerfed Terminators, where you just kind of get to the objectives and you sit there and you enjoy the benefits of that. And you probably want to go with units in the core Space Marine book or index that get bonuses, such as the Assault Intercessors, where if they're on an objective, they get to reroll their wound roll due to their Shock Assault ability, because that's where you're going to want to be.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. If your arm, I mean, and you and I both know the game's already predicated around objectives, so it's one of those where there's no reason not to take these units that just get better around them anyway. And then, like you said, you're not freaking out over battle shocks because you might lose a little bit of OC, but then your army just becomes more efficient at killing and you don't lose all your OC. So if you can put damage out, you're more easily able to retake those objectives.
Right. I think there's still going to be some play in playing Dark Angels with the Gladius Task Force, because why wouldn't you want to try out the Master of Ravenwing Samael with Advance and Charge? Just he has it. Why? Because it's Assault Doctrine, and I'm doing it. Deal with it. Or having all the different bikes, or just Terminators in general that you can do that with. So that's something, again, they've talked to us about going to 10th, is it's not so much what the model is painted, it's what detachment you're playing with is what matters. So you could play Unforgiven one game. Now, a tournament, I think you're going to be stuck playing the same detachment the way through. But if you're playing amongst your buddies or you're play testing things, you can bounce back and forth between the Gladius Task Force and the Unforgiven Task Force. And I guess that also comes into play the idea that with the Grim Resolve, that's just always on, every turn of the game, as opposed to combat doctrines where you only get each one once per game,
And there's
and then
only
you can get
3,
a
right?
fourth turn. There's only 3, but you can build an enhancement in that lets you cheat out a fourth one. But then there is a turn where you don't get it. But then Grim Resolve is just always there. But then you don't lose the ability to sort of go, oh, I need advance and shoot. Oh, I need fall back and shoot and charge. Oh, I think that's what that is. One of them involves falling back, which also I just saw on the stratagem. Intractable for Dark Angels used to be a Dark Angel specific fall back and still shoot. It's now fall back, shoot, and charge. So that was another buff that was hidden inside that detachment.
So here's a question for you. And again, it's because, I don't understand completely how Space Marines work just because they always get so much stuff, right?
Right.
Can you take Dark Angels units if you take the Gladius Task Force? And the reason I ask is because, like, in Grim Resolve, it says under restrictions you can include Dark Angels units but cannot include. But then this one doesn't have any restrictions, so I assume yes. But I just didn't know what your thoughts on that
Yeah.
were.
So the restriction is that if you have a Dipsize unit that has a second faction keyword on its stat sheet, that faction keyword is the name of that unit's chapter. For example, Kalgor has Ultramarines, blah, blah, blah. You cannot include units from more than one chapter in your army. And that's the army rule for Dark Angels up at the top, or for Space Marines up at the top.
This one?
Before you get to the Gladius Task Force.
If an Adeptus Astartes unit has a second faction keyword on its data sheet, that faction keyword is the name of that unit's chapter. For example, Marnius Calgar has both Adeptus. You cannot include units from more than one chapter in your army. But if they don't have a second faction keyword, you can still take them because they don't have a chapter, right? That's how I'm
I would assume
understanding that.
so then, yeah.
Okay.
Right, but
So yeah, you guys will still get to cherry pick your rules and cherry pick your units. Got it.
right.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure.
But the point with this is going to be that this is how they're going to modify rules going forward for everybody, right? So when we're in the index hammer right now, yes, there's probably only going to be one detachment per faction.
Right.
Unless, like, I could see Drukari being different because it's 3 armies in
So
one,
the
sort of how
detachment
Dark
they've
Angels
already
are.
revealed is just the real space raid. So it's bringing all 3 of them in a single detachment anyway. So that's already, like, the precedent's been set that Drukari is just going to be in a real space raid, and while you're in the real space raid, you bring any number of the units you want, but you get bonuses if you have an Archon, you get bonuses if you have
Right.
the Homunculus, etc. So I'll be curious to see
Right, but
what else is there, but go ahead.
but they're going to release a codex at some point,
Right,
and
I
I'm
just meant
assuming
an
that's where we're going
index,
to see
right.
more of it. And then also the way the seasons are going, there could be a season where they're like, we need to buff Witch Cult, or we need to buff Raven. You know, we're talking about Space Marines. You need to buff Raven Wing, so people will play with more Raven Wing.
We need to sell more bikes, damn it.
And so now for this month, you have, because I'm still under the impression there's going to be a point in 10th edition where they take a bunch of stuff off the Legends list for a season and say, you know, storyline wise, Belisarius Call found a bunch of Leviathan Dreadnought chassis and they dusted them off and sent them out to everybody, and now they're being used. So everybody, for this 6 months, you get to play with your Leviathans again.
Well, I don't know that.
Like, I know that I have a feeling that's coming. I'm not saying that is coming.
Right.
I'm just saying I have a feeling that that is a possibility, and that would be a fun bone for, you know, for people such as myself, that I literally just finished painting my Leviathan like 2 weeks ago, and then that article dropped saying it got Legends, and I'm like, well, I just bought this model, put a month of hobby time into it, and now I don't get to play with. I mean, you can still play it, but I don't get to play a lot, and when I do play, it tends to be tournaments.
Right.
So I don't get to play with it, essentially, is what it comes down to.
Well, and
But
I
I
don't
feel
know
like
that
it'll
it's
get
all
changed.
staying Legends forever either.
Right.
You know, like you said, there could be seasons where they bring it back. There could just be a season where they're just like, hey, anything on Legends, legal for match play, go ham. And really,
Yep.
that's, as a company, that's the way. And we're getting way off topic, but that's the way we should be driving sales, is through seasons. But um, were there any standout units in Dark Angels that you thought, you know, like, hey, this is, like we had asked earlier about regular Space Marines? Was there anything in Dark Angels, like, how's your stupid Mortal Wound Jet? Is that thing still stupid?
Oh, it's still there. Let me go pull it up. I haven't looked at it specifically. I mean, for me, the big thing are the Ravenwing Knights with the having the anti-monster and the anti-vehicle.
Right.
The Vengeance Land Speeder being able, so that's one of the ones where if once per turn your opponent's shooting phase, when a unit friendly adversary's unit within 6 inches of this model is destroyed, this model can use this ability. Although it can't use it if it itself is destroyed. And if it does, after the attacking unit is finished making its attacks, this model can shoot as if it were your shooting phase, but you have to resolve those attacks against the enemy unit that destroyed the friendly unit.
Yeah.
So basically, you get a free turn of shooting out of it with your plasma battery, which is D6 plus 1 blast, twin linked. It has a hazardous and non hazardous profile. The hazardous profile is the big spicy strength 9, neg 3, 3 damage. And then the normal standard charge is strength 8, neg 2, 2 damage. But with the change the way hazardous works, like you're just going whole hog. You just go big plasma all the time.
Yeah,
Let's
because
see, the Dark Talon.
you're only
Here we
taking
go.
a maximum of 3 mortal wounds per hazardous weapon. So, yeah.
Okay, well, so here's how so the Rift Cannon has had a pretty big change, and so there's where I've got to eat my words a little bit on big things, and I'm kind of glad I have 2 of these painted so I can bring them out day 1. So the Rift Cannon has Blast, Devastating Wounds, it's range 18, D3 plus 1, Ballistic Skill 3, Strength 16, neg 4, 3 damage. So not quite a massive anti-vehicle weapon, but boy, you're going to put a hurt on some light vehicles if you get a bunch of hits and wounds off on it. And then it has a Hurricane Bolter with Rapid Fire 6 and Twin Linked. And then it does have the Stasis Bomb,
Well, and
where it
like with
flies over
O's of the
something, select
moment,
the
right?
unit.
You're going to be just that much more efficient as long as you pick the right targets anyway. So, like, yeah, it's not going to get a ton of shots, but there's so many ways to make your army so much
Oh,
more efficient.
this is a nice change. So it flies over something, it bombs it. This D3 mortal wounds. Then you roll a die. 1 to 3, that unit cannot fall back or advance in their next movement phase. On a 4, 5, 6, that unit must remain stationary in your opponent's next movement phase. So you can just pin something down, just period. It doesn't even have to be in combat. You just go, you don't move.
So I like
Which
that
is
better than the way the
that's
bombs
very
worked
powerful.
in 8th and 9th, right? I flew over this. I'm going to roll a die for 25 units, and each one that I roll a 4 up is just going to take a d6 mortal wounds. Like, I would much rather
I don't know
some sort
what
of.
bomb. I don't know what bomb you were talking about. That's not how that worked.
No, the AdMech bomber was pretty dumb, man.
Yeah, but that's not
Interest.
the Dark Talon. That's different.
No, I just mean in general. Like, I would much rather this type of interaction for bombs, where they're just like, all right, you take a D3, but then you also get some sort of negative effect. That's
Right.
all I mean.
Oh, and it has a permanent 5-up invuln. So all the stuff that had Jink in 9th edition,
It's just
they
baked in
carried.
now, right?
It's baked in, yeah.
Interesting,
Although
especially if only.
I don't know if regular bike squads retained the invuln though, and there's no keywords that I'm aware of that I saw that changes that.
And so like
It doesn't.
friendly
And the
for the chat, friendly units in the Twitch chat, friendly units can move through other friendly units, period. You just can't move through vehicles and monsters. So flying is what's going to let you move over your vehicles and monsters. That's the main thing. What's Raven Wing? What's your bike stuff called? Raven Wing what?
So regular bike squad does not have a Raven Wing keyword, and it doesn't have a permanent 5-up invuln from Jinx. So that is a nerf because they had the Raven Wing keyword in Dark Angels armies in the previous edition. The Black Knight is, I guess, the one to check if they kept the invuln, which if they do is a buff because you only got that invuln against shooting. Well, now it's just a permanent 5-up invuln, so now you have that
Right.
shooting against
Yeah, you
fighting
got it.
and
You
shooting.
got it.
That is a buff.
Yeah.
But regular bikes did not keep this. Outriders did not keep the Jink Invul.
Sure. So it's
But
literally just the Dark Angel specific bike squads that got it.
right. And did you notice that the speaking of that, that with Outriders, they now operate like regular bike squads now, where they can go up to
3 to 6,
6
yeah,
and the
yeah.
sergeant. They go up to 5 and the sergeant for a total of 6, and then you can put one of the ATV things in there like an attack bike, and then the ATV thing I think I mentioned this earlier can shoot if you shoot at the Outrider squad.
So this might be the addition that I finally build that White Scars army. That's all I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, and then you can throw the Master of Ravenwing in there, and then that whole unit has advance and shoot and charge,
Nice. Hell yeah.
which is pretty sweet.
And did you notice there's no auto advance on anything that I've seen yet?
Regular bikes I think have turbo boost. Yeah, they have the auto advance 6.
Are you 100% sure?
I'm looking at it.
Oh, okay. Because the Outriders didn't have it. I did look for them.
Yeah, it's interesting how certain things got cherry picked across, and then like if you look at like Assault Marines versus Assault Marines with jump packs, they have two different sets of rules. And I also thought it was interesting that a tactical squad has fallback and shoot and charge. I think they have the charge added in.
Oh, the Outrider. Okay, so the Outrider squad does have turbo boost. There was a bike I saw that didn't have it. Was it maybe one of the characters?
Probably a character, yeah.
Because that was a conversation I was having, and somebody was like, "No, they don't have it." And I looked at maybe it was a character didn't have it. Something didn't have it. Yeah, there we go. So I must have just looked at a character. There we go. Perfect.
Okay, here tactical marines they do have fallback shoot and charge, which is pretty
Nice.
sweet.
So here's a question for you guys. The Black Knights in the command squad don't have that ability listed. Do they still get the Knights of Caliban ability? And would the character gain it when he joins the squad? So let's look at the command squad real quick. I don't need that one. Command squad. Because the Ravenwing Black Knights get the Knights of Caliban, which is what gets you. Is that a special command squad? You guys know. I don't.
Yeah, so they're two different squads, and the way it's written, uh, and I think this is done intentionally so that give you a reason to run one over the other. I think the Black Knights squad specifically has the Knights of Caliban
Yep.
rule, and the command squad does not. But the command squad in exchange has you can bring back a guy, you get +1 to your OC, and you can heroically intervene for free. So you're trading out those three abilities to have when I charge, I have anti-monster and anti-vehicles 4 up. Now,
That makes
Chris was
sense.
probably because he's played and looked at it, as you mentioned earlier, about what happens with characters when they join units. Do these rules transfer over to the
They
character?
do.
I'm okay.
Because, like I said, let's look at this Ravenwing command squad right now because I've got it pulled up. Okay. It's got while this unit contains an apothecary, that's a bad one. Astartes a banner. While this unit can this is all if you contain because it's a
Go
unit
down,
of
go down, go
characters. Yeah,
down to the
yeah.
next. Go down to the next data sheet. That's the regular Black Knight squad.
This one. Yeah, yeah. So Knights of Caliban, each time this unit is selected to fight. So it's when the unit is selected to fight. If it made a charge move until the end of the phase, melee weapons equipped by models in this unit have the blank and blank. So yes, the character would, except for rules that trigger on unit destruction. And a good example of that, okay, is like if you are playing a mission that has an like victory points for killing a unit, then the character would be worth his own victory points, and then the squad would be worth their own victory points because you're gaining victory points upon unit destruction. That's the only time they're ever treated as separate units. Other than that, it's basically if it targets a unit, it affects both the character and the squad they're attached to. They're just one big unit. Okay, so the ATV attached to the Outriders wouldn't get the ability to shoot back at something that shoots at his friends. ATV
Yeah, I'm
attached.
looking at that right now.
Bailey's pulling it up. Correct. And that so was that Van Zig's in chat actually just hit the nail on the head. Is he's not a leader, so he doesn't share his card, and that is exactly how the leader is worded. Is that because they are a leader, they count as one big unit and share everything? So I would definitely agree with that. Is that because the ATV's not a leader, they would not transfer their stuff over? And again, unless that changes with an FAQ, but I don't think it will. I think that's intentional.
Well, and I think the other difference you see there too, looking at the cards, is that the Outrider squad includes all the information you need to run that ATV on its card already. Like it has its stat line, it has its weapons, it tells you what it's armed with, and then the ATV is on its own has that extra. So that would be a reason to run the ATV on its own as opposed to running the ATV in the squad. But you still probably want to run ATVs in squads because with the data sheet limit on a unit, right, you only get 3 ATVs because their max squad size on their own is 1. So you only ever get to run 3. But then if you ran 3 Outrider squads, you could run 6.
It's basically what Sam just said. Good timing.
Yeah, but I still think having one on their own is still pretty sweet just for the ability for it to counterattack things because you never know when that. I mean, you're basically, if you lose a unit, you're getting a free Overwatch attack.
Right. And that's another thing. Going back to keep in mind, like your captains, all you Marine players that are getting free stratagems, man, if you've got those captains in a shooty unit, you just get to fire Overwatch for free once per turn. That's another thing to keep in mind is these interactions that you're getting, you know, you guys get so much. So much.
Yeah, like we get to go get our rules released first.
I mean that's fair, but then you got to get the build up towards the end because you had an early edition
I also
codex.
like if you look at the Inceptor, thinking about plasma, that the baseline plasma now does 2 damage flat instead of 1. So when you supercharge, it goes to 3. So it's like they built Weapons of the Dark Age into the Inceptor squad, which now makes me now I want to go look at the data sheet again for Hellblasters,
Well, let's pull it up.
which they did not do for
No,
Hellblasters.
it's only the Inceptors.
But the regular Hellblaster squad still got the old ancient ability, where if one of them dies on a 3-up, you can make an attack with it.
I assume, and I haven't gotten to it yet, but I assume the Hellblasters just have one
Yeah, there's
plasma
just
gun right now.
there's one profile, and it has assault and heavy, and
Oh,
then
okay, so
it
you
has
just
a
choose
hazardous
which one.
profile.
So it doesn't matter what gun you're modeled with, you just choose which profile you want. Do you want the assault heavy?
Right,
And then you can supercharge. Okay, so it doesn't even differentiate between the gun that's on the model yet.
right.
On a 3-up, it gets to make its attacks. That's rough.
Well, it looks like Dark Angels are going to get. I saw in the chat about there being 2 codexes. Dark Angels are going to get 2 codexes because they're going to need the Space Marine codex when it drops, and then they're going to need the Dark Angels one that comes out in the spring next year, which was on the these new what do they call them? Where they lay it the timelines that they've been laying out. They have a specific word for it that's eluding me.
The roadmap?
That's it. The roadmap shows us that Dark Angels are coming out in the spring.
With my orcs, baby.
Yep.
I can't wait. I'm building myself up for that disappointment.
And something that I guess my other sort of I've looked at it since our boy Kyle brought it up too. I guess another thing for Space Marines just in general, grav cannons have anti-vehicle 2-up
Yes.
on a 3 attack, 24 range, 3 attacks, 4-up ballistic skill. It is heavy, so if you stand still, you go to 3-up. Strength 6, neg 1, 3 damage. The neg 1 kind of but if you get it through, 3 damage is pretty spicy. So there are some specific things and for vehicles, but I'm just overall just looking at the generic um, layout out of a lot of things. I'm just not super impressed. However, I do like, for anyone, the Desolation Squad. So if anyone's been looking at competitive Space Marines for a while, The Desolation Squad has been everywhere with Dark Angels, Iron Hands, and Space Wolves, and they got a targeter optic, so the little thing on their backpack basically lets them ignore if they as long as they don't move, they can ignore all the penalties for shooting indirect.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're still going to be in every Space
So
Marine list.
they're still gonna be pretty decent. And when you look at some of those things like whatever the land speeder is, that if you shoot at something, the next thing that shoots at it gets bonus AP. So you can shoot the land speeder at something and then shoot the desolators at it, and then the desolation squad gets an extra AP. Like it's easy. Easy money on that one.
I'm just looking at these Devastators.
Yeah, it's the Hellfire squad. Target
No, I just because of the graph cannon was already right there. That's what I was looking at.
right, but I'm just saying if you have a hail now I have to I don't have a hail strike. I have one of the other of each of the other ones, but now I need to go get a hail strike so that way I can shoot something and then I can shoot them with Desolation Marines. And then my Desolation Marines have
T-shirt
neg 1
cannons, I
AP.
love it, dude. I think, man, like I don't hate that unit, right? As a person who gets to play against Space Marines so much, like it's one of those right. I don't hate that unit. It just is exhausting to just play against them every time I play against a Marine, no matter what color their power armor is. Like, come on, guys.
What, you don't just want to play 30 Desolation Marines that are blue, and then 30 that are green, and then 30 that
Right.
are black, and
Well,
30
these
that
ones
are
are
another
red,
shade
so
of
they're
blue?
+1 to wound when I charge you, but I'm still just
Not
gonna sit here and shoot
anymore.
you. No,
Not
+1 attack,
anymore.
+1 strength, son.
Yeah. But they have but there are lots of sources of +1 to wound in the Space Marine Index. Just look at
What?
your
That's
chaplains.
crazy.
Now everybody gets +1 to wound with their melee weapons, and they don't even have to charge.
But there was a one thing. You know what I do want to look at while we're right here, buddy?
What's that?
Did they make it good? The
The
whirlwind.
whirlwind? Are you looking for the whirlwind? I'm
I've
literally
already
looking
got
at
it
it right
up.
now.
Let's go. It's one of the few Marine things I actually like, man. And it's probably because of my time playing Dawn of War, right? Like I used to just spam whirlwinds and just like launch artillery across the screen. Move 10, T10, save 3, 11 wounds. Pretty standard fare so far. One shot, yeah, the Hunter Killer Missile. Storm Bolter, sure. The Vengeance Launcher, D6 +3 shots, strength 8, neg 2, 2 damage.
And
So
it's
it's
blast, so you get
it's
more
a
bonus on
very
top of
good
it.
anti-infantry unit. Good
Yep.
lord. Like it is a very good anti-infantry unit. Pinning
And did you see
bombardment.
what it's?
What?
Yep.
Yeah. And
That's
you
what yeah.
after this model is shot, if one or more of these attacks made with this vengeance, so you can force battle shock. Yeah, no. These things are super solid, man. If they're cheap enough, these are going to be worth putting in armies, especially
Yep.
stacking your like even in your army, like stacking that speeder so they go to neg 3 to help compensate for the indirect fire, right?
Yep. Now, when they change rapid fire, Chris, is it you just add two more shots? Like if it's rapid
Yes.
fire two, or is it two
So
per
if you're
shot?
within range, if you're within half range, you just add the number of shots to your attacks. So rapid fire 2 for your storm bolter means within half range you get 4 shots because you're just adding 2. I think it's Gaskell was like rapid fire 6 or something dumb. So like within half range he gets 6 additional shots, but his dumbass still hits on 5s. So it's like I'll never shoot with him anyway because he still doesn't have an assault gun because that was too good. The one edition he had it.
Okay, so like with the Predator Destructor, when you go, the Predator autocannon has rapid fire two, so it's only going to 6 shots, not 8.
Yeah. Yep. The which
Which
one
is
was that?
still good
Was that the
because it's
destructor?
yeah, because that profile is it would be 4 to 6 attacks, hitting on threes, strength 9, neg 1, 3 damage.
Yeah.
And then
It'll
it goes
it'll
to neg
shred
2 if
light
you
vehicles for sure.
well, and then if it's targeting an infantry unit,
It
its
goes to
AP is
neg 2.
increased by 1, so it's now neg 2.
Yeah. Because that'll push Terminators to invuln or die, which I'm sure was like kind of the intent there.
Right.
And then still wound like light vehicles and APCs on 4s.
Yep.
Armored tracks.
So no, there's definitely some fun stuff, and of course, the big thing for me is with Terminators is that Land Raiders have assault doors, so you can now, or assault ramps. So now you can move the vehicle, get stuff out of the vehicle, and charge out of the vehicle, and it's going to be Terminators.
Let's
So be
go.
ready, world.
Orc trucks getting it back, buddy.
Orcs won't get it; they're not Space
No,
Marines.
no,
Let's
no.
not get our hopes up here.
Trucks are going to get that. Just the trucks, not the battle wagons. They're going to have the old open top rule, so I can just hop the hell out anywhere I want to and come get your ass.
I think you're setting yourself up for failure and disappointment,
Oh,
Chris.
I don't expect it at all. I just think it'd be funny if it happened. Because I would load that thing full of mega knobs in a heartbeat.
And we'll just meet in the middle, Chris,
That's
as
how I play, buddy.
it's supposed to be.
Have you looked at any of your other tanks? Man, these are what, T10? So they're not as beefy as I kind of
The Gladiators,
expected.
yeah, yeah. The Gladiators aren't. They're T10. That's where I was like, unless you're running the Lancer, right? The only weapon that they have that actually wounds that chassis on a 4 or better is the Lancer.
Right.
Which also allows it to reroll 1 hit wound, 1 wound roll, and 1 damage roll every time it shoots.
It's
So you're
weird.
gonna
Space
try
Marine
and you're gonna
Rhinos
try
have
and
2
X it
shooting
out.
points, but not KSM or CSM Rhinos or TS Rhinos, but Death Guard Rhino can shoot out. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some inconsistencies there, and I'm not 100% sure why, and I'm not even gonna pretend to speculate. Like it could be as simple as a typo, or it could be as simple as a play loyalist. um,
Simple as.
right? I don't know. I did notice that though. Vindicators. What do they got? D6 plus 3 shots? Good lord. I could see these seeing play if they're cheap too. Just because that's a really punchy anti-vehicle with a
Oh,
good
the
volume of
demolition
shots.
cannon
Yeah.
or the
Loyalty is its
demolisher
own.
cannon. Well, I mean, that's what's on the front of a lot of what are those tanks? The
Lehman
ones that
Russ?
Guard have. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
what Lehman Russ demolishers have. Same gun. Just gonna
Loyalty
have to
is
stand
its own
back.
reward. I like that. Land Raider. And I haven't got to look at some of this, so I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take some of your time looking at some of your stuff with you.
No, that's all right. I mean, like I said, they dropped 200 pages of rules on me between last week when
Okay.
I started doing this and today, and I've had to work. I've been at a Civil War reenactment all weekend where I had no phone, no connection to the outside world, and it was amazing to just sit around a campfire with the good old boys and have some drinks and just relax and not have the outside world pressuring me all the time.
Right.
And now I'm coming back to do this live stream, and I'm like, oh yeah, we had a bunch of rules. There's over 200 pages on top of 60 pages of core rules that I'm
That's
still
right.
trying to glean through.
That's right. Uh,
So
so I
it's a
just want
lot.
to point out how disappointing this weapon is because it is called the Godhammer las cannon, and it's just a las cannon with 2 shots. Like, come on. It could be way cooler.
It's fair. Did you
Do
see that Razorbacks also give you reroll wound roll if the unit that pops out? Like if you shoot something, like after this unit has shot, you select one enemy unit that it shot at, and then the unit that popped out of that transport this turn gets to reroll the wound roll. So you're just going to load a Devastator squad
right.
into one of these and then pop them out, and then they're going to go nuts.
I
I do
think
have a
it's
painted Razorback.
I think it's just a guy's name. Hey man, I'm Joey Godhammer, inventor of
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just one of those where like Jimmy Space, inventor of the Space Marines.
Oh yeah, here you go. So the Impulsor also has an ability. If you have a unit within 6 inches of this thing and you target that unit with a stratagem, on a 5-up you get your CP back. So there's another one of those that's through the Impulsor. It's either that or take a 5-up invuln. So I guess tactical flexibility, which is the name they always tell us is the name of the game with Dark Angels or with Space Marines in general, and I feel like with this edition more than most other editions, that is actually the case. And I like that. And I feel like there's also going to be some level of like sideboarding. I don't know how much of it's going to play out at the beginning. I think it's going to take us a couple months to figure it out and learn the matchups. But I feel like looking at what characters there are and who can go into what squads, you're going to have some ability, if you build your army right, to side deck your army by being able to go, oh, for this matchup, I need to put my captain in
Yep.
this desolation squad because there's a lot of terrain on this board and I need to get the most out of these guys. Or I need to put the captain in this squad so that they have sustained hits one and I get more bolter shots because it's orcs and or Tyranids or something like that.
Right.
Or no, I need to put sustained hits in my grav cannon squad because it's knights. And just by having these different squads and the characters, you can actually kind of sideboard what your army does based on your opponent by going, well, for this game, this character is attached to this squad. Because I think when you're looking at the when you look at the mission, doesn't that give you? Because you
Okay.
declare formations. Yeah, so step 5 of missions is you put your leaders with
Yeah,
their squads.
it's in the declare formation step. So it's like when you do your transports and reserves, that's where you also put your leaders in the squads. So it is right like effectively before deployment.
Yep. So I think that's gonna bring something back to the game that we haven't had since the ITC changed the rules about picking when you pick warlord traits and relics.
Unless you're Death Guard and aren't allowed to move your characters to anything because screw Death Guard. I what do they only go into like the Plague Marine squads? Like they just don't have options, I assume. I don't I didn't look at the Death Guard one yet, I'll be honest. Storm Talon gunship. So and man, like I still think aircraft are going to be very high points. I don't know if you've looked at any of them, Bailey, but I think aircraft are going to just like be one of those things where they make them so expensive that you really have to think about whether or not you want them.
My problem with aircraft is I remember a time before there were aircraft in the game, and I've always felt that bringing aircraft is cheesy, even though I have 2 Dark Talons. I'm not a huge fan of bringing them because they bring in so many more rules, and you have to remember all these extra things. And it's like one of those things where like you put it on the table and you just kind of look at it and go, oh, so I guess we didn't want to be friends. And that's sort of always been my my mentality with flyers and just Eldar in general. It's like, I mean, we had a chance to be friends, and then I saw what you put on the table, and I was like, I guess we're just never going to be friends. Like, you're not invited to my wedding. I'm not going to yours. Like, it's that simple.
Well, thankfully, I only have Dark Eldar. That's not as bad, right?
Oh no, those are built specifically to kill Space
Now
Marines. Even
they're
worse.
worse, man. Because they just don't get a psychic phase. So because they don't have that, they get other bullshit to compensate.
Well, nobody gets a psychic phase, so now everybody's even
That's
crazier.
right. We're all Dark Eldar now, boy. Have you looked at the faction focus for that real quick before we jump back into your Marines? Because I do want to talk about the bunker, but have you looked at the Drukhari faction focus?
No.
It looks hilarious.
Oh no.
So Kabalites have sticky objectives. If they're in a transport, their transport gets sticky objectives. If you run Venoms, you can combat squad witches or Kabalites and then put your combat squads into the Venoms.
Yeah.
And then what was the other thing that was really funny to me? Oh, in the fight phase, if you're not in engagement range and you're wholly within 6 inches of a Venom, you can just hop back in it.
Oh yeah, I saw it. Yeah, I talked to Cam about that. That there's stuff like that coming. All right, so it got brought up in the chat that if you battle shock a Hammerfall bunker, does that now gain objective control because of Grim Resolve? Same thing with flyers. If you battle shock a flyer, does it now suddenly have objective control?
Well, and I'll
That might
have
be
to
part.
look at the
That
aircraft rules because there might just be a rule that says aircraft can't control objectives. I haven't dug into aircraft rules a ton yet.
well,
Um,
they all just have OC0 from the core Space Marine ones.
Yeah, but I just mean there may be a clause in the core book specifically that says anything with the aircraft keyword if they still have it. I haven't looked because I don't use aircraft a lot, so it's not something I've been like, oh,
Yeah,
I need to know how
same.
this works. Um, But unless there's something that says like fortifications can't control objectives, then yeah, if with Grim Resolve they would get OC1. The other thing about that though would be with the deployment of fortifications, I would have to again look into it, but historically they've not been allowed to be put within 3 inches of an objective marker. Simply because it is a fortification, and some of them had wounds and some of them didn't. So they just said nothing within 3 inches. You can't use them to control objectives. So again, I would have to check that interaction anyway. Yeah, and I haven't looked either. Again, because it's not a type of model that I've really put on the table much. But if there is no limit, like if there's no 3 inches away, and that could be part of why you can't be on objective markers anymore, is because of if they remove the 3 inch limit. That way you can't just put your bunkers like right on top of the objective and just
Right.
block people from controlling them. But I've heard this thing's actually pretty solid, so I wanted to dig into this because
Well, it gives your squads cover if they're not fully visible to the attacking model,
yeah,
so you can hide near it and give your own units cover. Um,
the
it
Ceramite
can
cover
shoot
here. Each time a
things.
ranged attack is allocated to a model. So hey, real quick, everybody, I want you, if you've got this or you can see it on my screen, Ceramite cover, there's an important word that is not in that, and it's infantry. So you will get cover on your
Uh-oh.
vehicles now. There's certain terrain features that do grant cover to vehicles and biker squads and stuff. So that's something to keep in mind also as you're playing this game, is that I think it's ruins were the like there's ruins and craters off the top of my head were the only two that were infantry specific. Correct. You can't, but you can use cover against a neg 1 weapon to keep you at 3 up, and you can use cover against a neg 2 weapon to push you to a 4 up. So while you can't push yourself to a 2 up with cover, like if you've got like a dreadnought, for example, or even a terminator or anything like that, you can at least mitigate 1 point of AP. I think terminators, I think still have to have two. I'd have to look at that interaction. I don't remember how the 2+ save works. I think it works the same. Like I think neg 1 still pushes you to 3 up, and then the cover would still keep you at your 2 up. But that's the main thing, is that your bikes, you can get cover for them now. Your vehicles, you can get cover for them now. Your Missy Smelliots and your Keepers of Secrets, you can get cover for them now just by placing them behind certain pieces of terrain. So that's something to keep in mind, especially if you've got those bigger models, like the demons. So
Which you might look at this and go, why would I care? This is a loyalist thing. Well, some people play doubles or team events where they're doubles elements, and you could hide those things behind this, and now it gets cover.
okay, so
That's silly.
also read that again, buddy. Each time a ranged attack is allocated to a model, if that model is not fully visible to
Oh no, it's
every.
everything.
Yeah, so it's
Good.
not just friendly either. So that's another thing to keep in mind is if your opponent puts a bunker on the table, you also get to benefit from its cover.
That's silly.
That's awesome though. Like I want stuff like this to hit the table more. I love seeing this stuff, right?
Yeah, they did get rid of dense cover. Dense cover doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, then I guess looking at the weapons profile on this thing, it's got 2-shot big missile on a 4-up. It's pretty close. You didn't have the guaranteed +1 damage on the previous version of it, so that's nice. And then 2d6 +2 frag. Boy, getting sleepy.
Yep,
It's
yep.
only 7:30 my time.
I know it.
That's not too bad. It's still got the flamers and bolters with sustained hits, defensive array, which is each time it ends its move or fallback move in range of this weapon, then is eligible target. So it doesn't work in your movement phase or your shooting phase anymore. It works in your opponent's movement phase. You see this, Chris?
Each time an enemy unit is set up or ends a normal advance or fallback move within range of this weapon, if that enemy unit is eligible target, the bearer can shoot this weapon.
You can do it up
Okay.
to four
So
times.
I don't see anything that says you still don't get to shoot it in your shooting phase, though.
Right.
So
But I'm
you
just
you
saying
could
that.
basically shoot it 5 times in a battle round, though, is what I'm saying.
Right. But what I'm saying here is that it used to be that you just, when you fired it in the previous edition, you just, on your turn, you targeted everything you could see in range and you shot at it on your turn.
Yes.
But now this is another one of these weird, not weird, but one of these new, like, interactive on your opponent's turn
Yep.
abilities where this thing actually just has 4 rounds of permanent Overwatch, which Overwatch changes pretty wild.
Yeah.
So that is pretty intense. That you're just like, yeah, just move out with it, just move within 36 inches and in line of sight of me, and stop and watch what happens. And I mean, it is twin heavy bolters basically, but
Well, it's
you get to
it's
shoot.
it's twin linked double heavy bolters, so you
Yeah,
get 6 attacks and you're re-rolling wounds.
yep,
And like your oaths, because there's no core interaction anymore, like your oaths and stuff like that will still affect it.
yep, and it has sustained hits.
And then the flamer ignores cover, auto hits. It's also a defensive array.
Yeah, so you can
That's
just flame stuff.
yeah, no, like this thing's actually pretty solid. I I'm about it, man.
And just looking at the way it's painted here, it's not going to take that long to paint.
No. It did used to be hot garbage. That is correct. That was awesome. Captain Sicarius. Yeah, I don't care about him. He's a poo butt. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
we don't
no.
care about those dark angels. So I guess if there's any at this point, like, is there any questions in the chat people want to ping in real quick?
Right. Any kind of rules questions, marine questions specifically? Is there a unit you want us to look at specifically? Anything like that? Because if not, we're probably going to be wrapping up soon. But if you've got something, let us know.
I know Blade Guard got. I guess I just saw a thing for the Blade Guard. A lot of people have been talking about them because they have an ability now where they can give themselves either reroll ones to wound or to hit, or they can reroll their invulnerable save rolls of 1, and they
Warriors
can
have a similar
choose.
interaction. Tyranid warriors.
Yeah, and they can just, yeah. Here we go. So they have a 4-up invuln, and they can reroll their hit rolls of 1, or the melee rolls of 1, or they can reroll invuln saves of 1. But everything else is fairly standard with their mastercrafted power weapon, 4 attacks. So they have the built-in shock assault.
Blade Guard are
Okay, yes, you're
weird.
not. Yeah, so you're not seeing any of those things for limited deployment for buildings or OC for aircraft. All right, well, I guess that's something we'll find out. Maybe in that day one FAQ. And
Yep.
the thing that you find out about those is the more people find things and talk about it, the more likely it ends up in the FAQ.
Yep.
And the more we stay silent on it, the more likely it is to slip through the cracks and we can have fun things. So if you want to have fun time, this doesn't leave, don't do things that you normally do, like bleep out this part, don't share this part with your friends, clip everything but this part. Let's keep it under
Hide your
wraps.
kids, hide your wife.
Uh, and we'll all have some fun in the new edition. But yeah, no, Blade Guard they basically have baked in Shock Assault now, and they still got their 3-up, their Strength 5, Neg 2, 2 damage,
Yep.
and it's just they reroll hit rolls of 1, reroll save rolls of 1, and then you can just stack all sorts of abilities on top of things.
It's interesting that it's only the invulnerable save.
No, it's fair. You don't want people to move block you with your knights with just crush the buildings with your stompy feet. That's what you got to do. Stomp them. And I now know who that person is.
Who that is?
Excellent. That's my boy. I think that's my boy Caleb.
Oh, all
Good
right.
old my because I know Caleb. My boy Caleb just bought a small chaos army.
Yeah. So it's new marine meta: hammerfall bunkers and drop pods. That's it.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious. It really would. What is the stupid veteran squad you could put like 2 models in?
Oh, the command squad that's gone now. It's now that big squad.
Nah, there was like
It's not,
a. They just have like. There we go. Bolt guns or something, right?
what you're thinking of, the company veteran squad.
That may you used to use it a lot for your little drop pod O's.
Yeah, that's gone completely. They killed off the company veteran squads
Okay, so that is what
because
I
you now
was
have
thinking of.
command squads, and basically everything got swooped into the stern guard squad.
Do we think the Hammerfall bunker is going to be worthwhile? Uh, it really depends. There's a couple rules that we need to check on with it. As far as like need to verify how it gets deployed and if it can control objectives. But I don't think it's bad. Like it just depends on what you mean by worthwhile. Like, is it gonna be in top table tournament lists? Probably not, because it's probably not your most efficient way to spend your points. Although if it's cheap enough, throwing it on a backfield objective is not going to be a bad use of it, especially because as soon as things get into line of sight and range of it, you can just shoot them. Um, can you use it effectively and efficiently to maybe like hit some mid tables at tournaments or just like dick with your friends and have good times? Yeah, absolutely. Unless it's just like pointed at an absurd cost.
It's true. Well, and the thing I want to see going into this is talking about the Hammerfall is like if you look at Sigmar, every faction has a fun building, and for a period they started giving factions in 40k buildings, and then they just kind of stopped. And I just want them to go back and keep giving people things
Well, and I
because
think I think with
it's fun.
40k the issue is that there's no like even attempt at balancing them. Like the Mech Boy Workshop has been a waste of money and points since it's come out. But then like the Necron pylons actually pretty solid, right? So I think
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing with 40k is that it's all over the place in how it interacts. And if they just kind of tried to standardize it a little bit and then either start like with AOS where they're just like, "Ah, you can bring one for free, fuck it." Like,
yeah. Drop pot assault's pretty nice.
yep, but you'd have it if it was free. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, AOS they are free buildings. Yeah, I need 3 free Hammerfall bunkers. Let's go
I'm
back to
gonna
7th edition with
speaking of free
formations.
buildings, I've got so many wildwoods I need to build.
Speaking of free buildings, do you want this Savelis Ruins kit that I've murdered that I don't want anymore?
I mean, if you're not going to use it, I'll put it to
I'm
use.
little. I am so angry at this kit. I literally almost picked it all up and threw it in the trash
Yeah, it's the
yesterday.
TT combat one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know a guy that's going to hate his life when I say, "Here, you need to build this."
especially after that person knows that I've mauled most of it.
Mangled it, dude. Yeah. Hit it with your man hands. All right, buddy. Well, I think this is a good stopping point then. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us, and we appreciate it. Big shout out to Bailey at Danklist. If you haven't watched his channel, check it out. He's one of my recommended channels on my channel, and of course, my channel's Phoenix
Thanks,
Gaming.
Pete in the chat. Pete's my boy too. Trying out for
Yeah,
Golden Demon.
hell yeah, dude.
At Adepticon, dude. I showed him how to paint at Gen Con. He said 2021. By Adepticon 2023, he was going for Golden Demon,
That's
and
awesome.
he went. We got a game in finally after 2 years of hanging out online, basically swapping picks, and roasted my ass with Custodes. Now see, you got me cussing, Chris, because I don't cuss on my podcast, but you got me cussing on yours.
Dude, everybody
Uh,
knows how it is on my channel, all right?
yeah, appropriate picks
I,
of his minis. I even,
yeah.
dude,
See,
I even got to
I'm
watch his.
glad. I'm glad Jimmy said it because I was thinking it and I just didn't want to say anything.
Even got to watch his wedding, on Twitch. That was pretty cool. So, that was a good. It was a good time. I'm glad to see Pete's really enjoying the hobby again, and he's been sending me pics of his non-metallic metalwork recently, and it's
Yeah, it's
looking good. So
awesome.
I know
Hell
he's
yeah.
gonna make another run at Golden Demon next year.
Upcoming events. The 1st of July, while we've got everybody here, I am running an apocalypse game in Chesterton. I've got an event created on Facebook. It is pay to play, but all the rules are laid out for you. You understand what you're getting when you pay for it. It just is a donation to a nonprofit, and that nonprofit is Military Gaming Command. They use gaming. Right now, their focus is video games, but they use gaming to reach out to veterans who are struggling with injuries, PTSD, and things of that nature. So it's a nonprofit that works very near and dear to a community that I'm very involved with. So it means a lot to me. And obviously, everybody's welcome. You can just come hang out if you don't want to play, and that's fine too. We will have a QR code, so if you can't make it and you want to donate, that's also fine. But it is a big APOC event. The rules packet is in the Facebook event, so if you need anything on that or information, feel free to message me. The end of July, Got Game in Plymouth, Indiana. Big shout out to Cam and Steve for allowing me to run events at their
Oh yeah.
store. Um, we are running a 2,000 point 10th edition tournament. It will be the first 10th edition tournament that I will be running. And then I think that covers my events. If you guys are up and about and you listen to Stat Check, I think this Thursday, tentatively, I've got to verify, but we were talking the other day, and it sounds like I'm going to be a guest on the X and One podcast, which will be Thursday evening. Those guys are awesome. Met them at Kansas City. Met
Oh,
Jeremy at
nice.
Kansas City, and he's a stellar human. Enjoyed my time with him. So if you like the sound of my melodious voice, you can always check it out there as well. And that's it. Cool, man. You got anything for everybody, Bailey?
Just keep your eyes out for the Path to Redemption's May episode that's coming out. As soon as Heath says I can share it to the public, because we did a really cool ninth edition overview with Alan Percival, who runs the Competitive Dark Angels Facebook page or Facebook group, and who's also like one of the top rated Deathwing players in England. And then Adam Camilleri, who is the number one rated in the world Dark Angels player, who also does massive amounts of 40k streaming and is quite a 40k celebrity. So it's those guys plus Heath, my partner in crime, and myself, sort of talking about what happened to Dark Angels from pre-Codex all the way up through the horrible inner circle nerfs into the Desolation Squad meta that we have here at the end of ninth, going into the 10th edition, and some speculation of what we think was going to be in 10th edition. So now we have these indexes. It would have made that podcast a lot more interesting and probably 3 hours longer, but that is for another day. So if you want to find me or see what we're doing with Dark Angels going forward, that's the place. The Path to Redemption. Just Google, Facebook or YouTube it. It's on Danklist Wargaming on Facebook. You can find me posting links there. I'm also on Spotify and anywhere podcasts are found. I post my episodes on there. So just Path to Redemption. You'll find it somewhere.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll be on at some point tomorrow so we can talk about some Sisters of Battle, and we'll see you all later.